Hey everyone, we're outside in a little bit different Devo format for this week. Lawrence and I are both bringing the Devo here together. And it comes from last week you had a sermon on prayer and fasting, and that sort of prompted a lot of interesting conversation and discussion on this. And so I just wanted to ask you, what kind of prompted this idea in your mind?
Yeah, well, in Acts chapter 14, as you're reading through about Paul and Barnabas establishing new churches on their first missionary journey, on their way back home, they were stopping back by and appointing elders in all these churches where they had started groups. And it says that they did so and were being accompanied by fasting and prayer. And I just thought, well, that seems like a good thing to do. So that's sort of where we got the idea of starting this. I thought about it myself, and then I contacted the other elders and said, hey, y'all interested in this? And everybody said, hey, it sounds like a great idea. So Everybody kind of jumped on board.
Sweet. Well, this is interesting to me because I've known people who have fasted, and I've maybe tried sort of, maybe not exactly fasting, but detachment from certain things. But I've never really been a part of a church that's done this sort of in somewhat as a community. And so what would you say is sort of the purpose of this combination of prayer and especially fasting?
Okay. Yeah, I think there's a number of interesting things in the Old and New Testament. We have a lot of examples of Christians or people of God fasting and praying. And one of the things that I'm mindful of is the story of the children of Israel coming out of Egypt in the Exodus. And once they crossed over, it says that they kind of forgot about God and they began to complain about having manna but no meat to eat. And Psalm 106 reviews this, and it describes it in an interesting way. It says that the people were craving this, and God sent them what they wanted in the form of these quail that were the meat they were craving. But it says that he also sent leanness into their souls. So it's like on one level they were physically satisfied, but on a spiritual level they were impoverished. And it's a terrible place to be when you're physically well off and satisfied and content and happy, but spiritually your soul is literally shriveling up, and we don't want to be in that situation. So fasting, I think, is kind of a way for us to remind ourselves of our need for God to provide for everything that we have, so that as we experience this physical hunger, it stimulates a sense of need and hopefully redirects our attention toward God, who is the source of all that we have.
Wow, so sounds like fasting, as you've described it, has so much to do with trust and dependence upon God. It's a way of drawing near to Him. It opens our eyes. It allows for discernment. But particularly, it's about a trust and dependence, which is absolutely so important for our cultural moment where we're so dependent on ourselves. So what a beautiful sort of spiritual discipline it is that we can take up, a gift that God's given us to participate in.
Yeah, it doesn't have anything to do with there being something wrong with food or that we need to afflict our bodies all the time. These are blessings that God has given us, but sometimes depriving ourselves of a temporal blessing like food sets us up again to realign ourselves spiritually and acknowledge our dependence upon God. And in accordance to what we're trying to accomplish in this is to align ourselves spiritually and focus on seeking God's will as we try to appoint new elders, new spiritual leaders that are going to direct the course of the church and shepherd our souls over the next many, many years. So we want to not do that independently of God. We want to be looking at His Word, but we also want to be preparing our hearts as we go to that Word and look at our brothers here in the church as we think about who should lead us into the future.
Absolutely, yeah.
I was thinking just about giving some pointers or some ideas people have asked about, well, how do we do this exactly? So just share with you a little bit about what I'm going to do. There's no rules. There's not necessarily a right and wrong way for you to do this. We don't want to come down with some kind of decree from on high. But what I'm planning to do is on Friday tonight, eat my dinner before sundown. I think sundown today is 6:20. So I'm going to finish my evening meal before 6:20. I'm not going to like gorge myself or anything like that. Just eat a normal meal. And then when I wake up Saturday morning, and instead of my typical eggs and oatmeal, I'm just not going to eat breakfast. And then when lunchtime rolls around, I'm not going to eat lunch. And then I'm going to gather with brothers and sisters who want to come and spend the last hour of that fast in prayer at, I think it's 5:18 on Saturday, which is exactly 1 hour before sunset on Saturday. And just pray together about seeking after God's will, and that His will would be done in our lives and in our church as we seek these elders. And then after that, I'm sure some people will be going over here to Slim Chickens as fast as they can get there, or just to return home and resume normal eating. But one of the things I mentioned in the lesson was that this isn't necessary for everybody. If you're not healthy, if you're a diabetic, if you're a nursing mother or pregnant, or maybe small children or other medical conditions, you should not do this. And it's not something, again, that you're told you've got to do. This is something that people can do voluntarily or choose not to. And it may be that some people who can't do it physically because of medical needs or other situations, maybe there's some other way that they can sort of have a fast. I don't know if you've got any ideas on that.
There are other ways to maybe fast, not necessarily from food, although it could be that. You could have some kind of restriction within your intake or within a specific kind of food. Maybe you cut coffee for the day. That might be too hard, but maybe that's the kind of sacrifice that's good for this kind of thing. Or it may have to do with something totally different. It could have to do with fasting from social media or technology, or it could be any number of other things that are related to, it some way takes our focus off of the things of this world and maybe the things that we often look to for dependence, and focuses our attention and our focus, and again, our dependence and trust in God, in welcoming in His discernment, especially as we think about what we're undertaking here at Lost River and what the Spirit is doing here at Lost River.
Yeah, that's a great idea, because just as like your craving for food can be a reminder of dependence and to stop again and pray each time those hunger pains come up, the same way every time we feel like I've got to reach and grab my phone, today I'm not doing that. Instead of doing that, I'm gonna seek the Lord.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's not make Lawrence do this all by himself. Let's, in whatever way is best for you, join in on this process. And I want to close with just one other thought that Lawrence mentioned in his sermon. He brought up the example of Anna. Here she is, who she has been praying and fasting has been a part of her spiritual journey throughout her life. And at the end of this journey, because of her fasting and prayer and calling out to the Lord, she gets to see the Messiah. She gets to see Jesus. And maybe in our own way, that's what prayer and fasting can be for us. Maybe we don't get to see baby Jesus or something like that. That's not what I mean. But through prayer and fasting, it's a way that we can perhaps see the Messiah, see Christ more clearly, and welcome His life and His guidance increasingly into our lives and what we're doing here as a church.